8 years of ramen, one key in my hand. They say the American dream is owning your own home, but they never tell you about the sleepless nights, the skipped vacations, or the dinners that cost less than a gallon of gas. For me, the dream wasn't just a white picket fence, it was dignity. It was knowing that every penny I pinched, every invitation I declined, and every indulgence I put off was leading to one thing: a front door with my name on the mortgage. 8 years. That's how long I lived like a ghost of myself. While my coworkers planned weekend getaways to the mountains or showed off new shoes from Macy's, I was carefully measuring out $1.29 packets of ramen noodles and comparing off-brand detergent prices at the dollar store. No restaurants, no shopping sprees, no Starbucks lattes. I wore the same winter coat for 5 years, sewing up the lining when it started to fray. And when my friends posted selfies from sunny beaches in Cancun or Florida Keys, I scrolled in silence from my twin-size bed in a shared apartment with peeling paint. But I had a spreadsheet. I had goals. I had purpose. I worked a steady job as a data analyst, not glamorous, but it paid the bills. Every payday, I transferred 40% of my check into a savings account labeled House. Not someday, not maybe, but House in all caps. And every month, as that number grew by a few $100s, so did my resolve. I cut out every unnecessary expense. I canceled subscriptions. I didn't own a car. I took the bus, rain or shine. I meal prepped like a maniac, turning 10 pounds of chicken thighs from Costco into a week's worth of protein. I watched YouTube videos on how to patch drywall and reseal windows. Not because I needed to, but because I knew someday I'd need to. Friends asked why I was so extreme, why I didn't live a little. I told them, I'll live a lot later. The truth was, I was tired of feeling behind, of watching others breeze through life with family handouts or lucky breaks. I didn't have a safety net. I didn't have parents who could co-sign a loan or help with a down payment. What I had was grit. What I had was an iron will. Then one day, it happened. It was a Tuesday morning in April when my realtor called. "The seller accepted your offer," she said, and I dropped my coffee mug. The chipped one I'd bought for 99 cents at Goodwill. It shattered on the tile floor, and I didn't even care. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a modest 1,400 square feet in a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets and front porches where people still wave to each other. The inspection came back clean. The previous owners had taken care of it, loved it. Now it was mine. Signing the final paperwork at the title office felt like walking across a graduation stage no one clapped for. Just me and the notary, exchanging nervous smiles. When I walked through that house for the first time with the key in my hand, I cried. Real chest-heaving, ugly tears. Not because it was extravagant. It wasn't. But because it was earned. I bought a used washer and dryer from a local couple on Craigslist, carried them in with a friend, and hooked them up myself. I splurged on a couch from a real furniture store. Not a futon, not something I had to assemble with an Allen wrench, and it didn't hurt my back when I sat down. For the first time in nearly a decade, I felt like I could breathe. Everything in that house meant something. The new shower curtain I picked out at Target? Victory. The matching set of wine glasses from Kohl's? Triumph. Even the ceiling fan I installed in the master bedroom during a YouTube marathon at 2 a.m. felt like a gold medal. And here's the part they don't tell you in the movies. When you buy your first home, not inherited, not gifted, but earned, every creak in the floorboard, every scuff on the wall feels like proof you made it, that the long nights, the cheap dinners, the silence you endured when no one believed in you were all worth it. I wasn't just a homeowner, I was a survivor of sacrifice. And in America, there's no sweeter revenge than standing barefoot in your own kitchen, sipping coffee from your own mug, and realizing, this is mine, all of it, And I didn't owe anyone a damn thing. Where was the applause? You'd think after 8 years of scraping by, after saving every nickel and saying no to every indulgence, finally buying a house would earn me a pat on the back from the people who were supposed to love me most. But when I sent out that group text, big news, I bought a house, housewarming in 2 weeks, hope to see you there. The silence was deafening. Friends were calling within minutes. My college roommate Laura screamed over the phone like I just won the lottery. My coworker Brian texted a congratulations and asked if I needed help setting up the TV. Even neighbors I'd just met knocked on my door to say welcome to the neighborhood. But from my own family, nothing. No reply from Mom, no thumbs up emoji from Dad, not even a half-hearted congrats from my older sister, Melissa. I kept checking my phone, refreshing the screen as if it were broken. Maybe their phones were off. Maybe they were planning a surprise visit. Maybe they just needed a few days to process. I gave them the benefit of the doubt, because that's what I'd always done. But days passed, and not a word, not a call, not even a "how many bedrooms?" The silence hurt more than I expected. This wasn't just about a house. This was about recognition, about being seen, about finally doing something right, and wanting the people who raised me to see it. But they didn't. Still, I held on to hope. Maybe they wanted to see the house in person. Maybe they didn't know how to say congratulations, so they were waiting until the party to say it in person. I spent the next 2 weeks cleaning, decorating, and arranging every square inch of that house like it was about to be featured in Better Homes and Gardens. I hung new curtains in the dining room, lit scented candles in the bathroom, even printed little signs for the food I had catered from Johnny's Italian kitchen downtown. I imagined the moment my parents would walk in, their jaws dropping. I imagined Melissa smiling and asking which room had the best view for her kids when they visited. I imagined pride. I imagined love. But when the day came, the only thing they brought with them was disappointment, and not the kind you could hide behind forced smiles. They showed up late, no call, no message. I opened the door with my heart racing, expecting hugs and excitement. Instead, I got a stiff nod from Mom, a hollow one-armed hug from Dad, and a mumbled "behave yourselves" from Melissa as her kids ran inside without even saying hello. No congratulations, no "wow, this is beautiful," not even a compliment on the food. It felt like they hadn't come to celebrate me at all, but to inspect something. And sure enough, that's exactly what Melissa did. She vanished upstairs and spent 20 minutes walking through every room like a real estate agent sizing up a listing. When she came back down, she whispered something into Mom and Dad's ears. I didn't know what she said, but I saw what it did. They smiled for the first time that evening, but not at me. Not for me. Later, as my friends toasted my hard work and told stories about how I used to clip coupons just to make my budget work, I felt my eyes water. Not from pride, but from pain. Because I realized, right then and there, I had more family in that room full of friends than I did from the people whose blood I shared. And when my own mother stood up in the middle of those toasts to call me selfish, when she accused me of hoarding space because I didn't hand over my house to my sister with 3 kids, I knew the truth. My success wasn't invisible to them. It was threatening. They weren't proud of me because they didn't think I deserved it. In their eyes, I didn't sacrifice. I got lucky. I didn't earn anything. I was just one person, taking up too much room in the world. But I know what I lived through. I know what it took. I built my future bite by bite out of clearance dinners, bus rides, hand-me-down clothes, and the kind of quiet discipline most people will never see. And when I finally made it to the finish line, my family turned their backs, not because I failed them, but because I refused to keep failing myself for their comfort. And that realization, that was harder to swallow than all those years of ramen the toast that broke me. You can spend your whole life building something, brick by brick, choice by choice, only to watch someone try to rip it away in a single moment. That moment for me came not in a courtroom or a family meeting, but in my own living room, during what was supposed to be the happiest night of my life. My housewarming party was in full swing. Laughter filled the rooms, the smell of garlic bread wafted through the kitchen, and my dining table, one I'd bought with my own paycheck and assembled myself, was surrounded by people raising their glasses to toast my hard-earned success. My friends were glowing with pride on my behalf. And then my mother stood up. She didn't raise a glass. She didn't smile. She didn't even look at me with warmth. Instead, she cleared her throat like a judge about to deliver a sentence. The room fell quiet. I turned toward her with a hopeful grin, thinking maybe, just maybe, she was about to surprise me with a heartfelt toast. I was wrong. "Rachel has nothing to celebrate," she began, her voice hard and sharp. "She's been irresponsible and selfish." At first, I thought I misheard, but then she continued, louder this time, telling a room full of my friends that I didn't deserve my own house. Instead, she said, Melissa did, because Melissa had 3 children, because Melissa worked part-time and was tired, because Melissa, my older sister, was a mother, and I was just a single woman with too much space. The words hit like a slap. I looked around the room, my face flushed with humiliation. My friends sat frozen, their smiles gone. You could have heard a pin drop. And then, like clockwork, Melissa stepped forward and threw her arms around her kids as if she were shielding them from some invisible enemy. She didn't look at me, just at everyone else as if to say, "See? Don't they deserve more than her?" What they didn't say aloud, but made painfully clear, was that they believed my sacrifice meant nothing. That 8 years of 16-hour days, of rice and beans, of skipping medical checkups to save money, all of it could be wiped away with one guilt trip, as if my house was a trophy to be redistributed to whoever had the loudest sob story. Then Aunt Margaret chimed in, Mom's cousin, who had shown up late and barely spoken 2 words to me until now. "You should give the house to your sister," she said matter-of-factly. "Those kids need it more than you." And there it was, the betrayal wrapped in moral superiority, the assumption that because I didn't have children, my needs were second class, that my hard work should be sacrificed in the name of family duty, not celebrated, not honored, but surrendered. I was too stunned to speak. Thankfully, not everyone was. My grandmother, Dad's mom, stood up next. At 82 years old, barely 5 feet tall, she looked around the room with fire in her eyes. "Absolutely not," she said, steady as stone. "Rachel earned this house herself. She doesn't have to give it to anyone." It was the first moment I felt someone had truly seen me that night. The room exploded into chaos. People started arguing, half of them insisting family comes first, the other half defending me and my right to keep what I'd worked for. Laura was shouting. Brian was standing between 2 distant cousins. My college buddy Tom looked like he wanted to throw his wine glass. And my parents? My sister? They just stood there, watching the explosion they had lit, with smug satisfaction on their faces. That's when I knew this had never been about space, or kids, or needs. It was about control. They thought they could shame me into surrender, that if they humiliated me loudly enough in front of the right people, I'd cave, just like I always had, that I'd put my head down, swallow the insult, and hand over the deed. But not this time. I didn't say anything that night. I didn't scream or cry or make a dramatic scene. I just stood in my own home, on my own floors, next to my own table, surrounded by the friends who truly loved me. And I watched my so-called family walk out the door, because that's the night I learned something vital. You don't owe your success to the people who only show up to take it. The post that burned it all down the night they walked out of my house, leaving behind a room full of chaos, half-eaten garlic bread, and shattered trust. I told myself it couldn't get worse. I figured that was the storm, and now came the quiet. Maybe I was naive to believe they'd just stop. But narcissism rarely goes down quietly. And my mother? She wasn't done. She wanted a war, and she brought it to Facebook. It was a Wednesday morning when my phone rang at work. Laura's name lit up the screen, and her voice was sharp with fury the moment I picked up. "Rachel, have you seen your mom's post?" "What post?" "Go look. Right now." My stomach dropped before I even opened the app. There it was, pinned to the top of her page for all the world, and all our relatives to see. Dozens of photos, carefully chosen and cruelly contrasted. On one side, Melissa's cluttered apartment, taken in poor lighting, the kids looking tired and the rooms staged to seem tragically cramped. On the other, my house, bright and pristine, filled with people smiling and toasting, and me at the center, glass in hand, smiling like a woman without a care. And the caption? While some people celebrate in their big, empty houses, my daughter Melissa works day and night to provide for her 3 beautiful children in a tiny space that barely fits their needs. It breaks my heart to see my grandchildren suffer while their aunt lives comfortably, caring only for herself. It was manipulative, it was theatrical, and worst of all, it was a lie. Melissa's apartment was clean, modern, in a great school district, and big enough for all 3 of her kids. I knew it. I'd been there countless times. The photos had clearly been taken during a messy day, probably staged to garner pity. The contrast was no accident. It was calculated. The comments section was worse. Aunt Margaret chimed in first. "Rachel should be ashamed. What kind of person hoards comfort while children suffer?" Then came second cousins, old church friends, neighbors from my childhood, some I hadn't heard from in years, all jumping in with their unsolicited judgments. Selfish, ungrateful, disgraceful. And just like that, my phone became a weapon against me. Call after call, text after text. Some were pleading, others furious. Cousin Amanda cried into my voicemail, begging me to think of the children. Uncle Stanley left a voice message saying I was disappointing everyone and tearing the family apart. What they didn't know was that I'd been supporting that very family in secret for years. I'd given my parents $1,500 toward their mortgage 3 winters ago, when Mom said they might lose the house. I'd paid $800 for Dad's car repairs so he could get to work. I handed Melissa $5,000 to help cover her divorce attorney, never asked for it back. But when I finally had something of my own, I was the villain. I stopped answering my phone, blocked numbers, deleted apps. I sat alone in the living room of the house I earned, surrounded by silence and fury, wondering if maybe, just maybe, they had broken me. And then Grandma called. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "can you come see me?" Her voice was like a lighthouse cutting through the fog. I drove over that same afternoon. She didn't waste time with small talk. The moment I walked through her front door, she pulled me into a hug tighter than I'd felt in years. When I showed her the Facebook post, she stared long and hard, silent for a while. Then she looked up and said something I'll never forget. "This isn't family. This is bullying, Rachel. And it stops now." She made me tea, the kind with honey and lemon the way she always did when I was sick as a kid. And for the first time since that cursed housewarming, I felt like someone saw me, not as an ATM, not as a scapegoat, but as a person. Grandma didn't just listen. She stood with me. She told me stories about her own struggles, reminded me that sacrifice was noble, but only when it's given freely, not extorted. "You don't owe them your peace," she said. "You earned this home. It's not their prize to claim." And just like that, I remembered who I was. I was the girl who turned down vacations, skipped birthday dinners, and slept under a leaky ceiling just to save $75. I didn't endure all that to be digitally crucified by my own mother. They could shame me online, they could spread lies, but they couldn't take away what I built with my 2 hands, my one steady paycheck, and a spine they didn't expect me to have. And for the first time, I was ready to fight back, not with words, but with boundaries. The will that changed everything. I thought my grandmother's words over tea would be the final page in this family drama, that her support would give me the emotional closure I needed to finally move forward. But Grandma, she had something else in mind, something bold, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. 3 days later, on a quiet Saturday morning, there was a knock at my door. I peeked through the peephole, expecting maybe Laura or Brian. But there she was, Grandma, standing tall in her cardigan and orthopedic sneakers, and behind her, like a somber parade of shame, were my parents and Melissa. My heart dropped. "Grandma?" I said, confused, opening the door. "We need to have a serious conversation, Rachel. All of us." The last time all of us had sat down together was my housewarming party, and we all knew how that ended. My gut twisted as I led them into the dining room, the same one they had once stood in while trying to strip away everything I'd earned. We sat in tense silence until Grandma cleared her throat. "I've been thinking about this situation all week," she began, her voice calm but firm, "and I've made a serious decision." My mother leaned forward eagerly. Dad nodded. Melissa's eyes darted around my house, the same calculating look she wore the night she toured it like a buyer. "I met with my lawyer yesterday," Grandma said, "and I changed my will." You could hear the air shift in the room. "I had originally planned to leave everything to Frank," she said, nodding toward Dad, "so he could divide it fairly between his daughters. But this entire situation has made it painfully clear that fair is not how things work in this family." Mom's smile began to falter. Melissa's brows creased. Dad sat back in his chair, uncertain. "I'm leaving my savings, almost $400,000, entirely to Rachel," Grandma declared. The room froze. "And I'm splitting my house 50-50 between Rachel and Melissa." Melissa's face flushed red. "What? That's not fair. Rachel already has a house. I'm the one with 3 kids." Grandma didn't flinch. "And Rachel is the one who worked 8 years, made sacrifices, and still supported you through your divorce. That was her money she gave you for your lawyer, wasn't it?" Melissa's mouth opened and closed, stunned into silence. Mom shot up from her chair, voice trembling with rage. "Mother, you can't do this. Melissa needs that money. Rachel is being selfish. How can you reward her for that?" "I'm not rewarding selfishness," Grandma said, her eyes sharp as steel. "I'm rewarding responsibility. I've watched Rachel be treated like a second-class member of this family her entire life. I've stayed silent long enough." Dad finally spoke, his voice quieter. "Mom, we're family. We should share everything equally." Grandma turned to him. "Did you share equally when you helped pay for Melissa's wedding but ignored Rachel's college graduation? Did you share when you stayed at Melissa's house for 2 weeks to help with her newborn but couldn't help Rachel move apartments?" No one spoke. Grandma wasn't done. "You all showed me who you really are. You tried to humiliate Rachel at her own housewarming party. Then Deborah," she turned sharply to my mother, "posted hateful lies on Facebook to turn the whole family against her. Mom's face flushed deep red. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Grandma cut in. "And if you don't delete that post by tomorrow morning and publish a public apology, I'll change the will again and leave everything to Rachel. Every penny, every piece of jewelry, every stick of furniture in my house." You could have heard a pin drop. She pointed to the front door. "Now get out of Rachel's house and think very carefully about what matters more, your pride or your future." They left in silence, stunned and humiliated. When the door closed, I burst into tears. Grandma pulled me into a hug. "I should have done this years ago," she whispered. "I've watched them drain you, guilt you, ignore your worth, no more." The next morning, like magic, the Facebook post vanished. In its place was a half-hearted, obviously forced apology from my mother. "I want to apologize to my daughter Rachel for the inappropriate things I said about her home purchase. I was wrong, and I'm proud of her accomplishments." It didn't sound genuine, but I didn't need it to be, because now, for the first time in my life, I held the power, and it wasn't revenge, it was validation. They thought I'd fold, but I didn't. After my grandmother walked them to the door with the authority of a judge ending a trial, the house fell silent. I stood frozen in the entryway, her words still echoing in my ears. "Every penny, every possession, gone unless you apologize." And like clockwork, the next morning, Mom's Facebook post disappeared. In its place was a new one, short, stiff, and painfully performative. "I want to apologize to my daughter Rachel for the inappropriate things I said about her home purchase. I was wrong, and I'm proud of her accomplishments." It was the kind of apology you offer a boss you can't stand, typed through gritted teeth and trembling fingers. No mention of the lies, the photos, or the campaign of guilt. No mention of the emotional damage she had orchestrated across weeks. But it didn't matter. The post wasn't for me. It was for Grandma, and for the will. Within hours of the post going live, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Voicemail after voicemail, texts, emails, even a letter slipped into my mailbox. They weren't congratulating me, they were begging. "Rachel, please talk to Grandma. Tell her to undo this. You know Melissa needs the money more than you. We've made mistakes, sure, but family forgives." The messages came in waves, some filled with saccharine sweetness, others seething with guilt and veiled threats. My father's message was the most desperate of all. His voice, usually so proud and firm, was cracking. "Rachel, sweetheart, I know we haven't always done right by you, but this isn't fair. We didn't know it meant this much to you. Please don't let your grandmother punish us all." I sat on my new couch, the one I picked out for its firm support and clean lines, and listened to each message, one by one. Then I deleted every single one. Because the truth is, it had always meant this much to me. They just never asked, never cared. And now, they weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry it cost them something. What they failed to understand was this. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. And peace for me came from no longer being a doormat in my own family. I wasn't about to hand that power back. They thought I would cave, because I always had. I caved when Mom asked for just a little help on the mortgage. I caved when Melissa needed money for her divorce lawyer. I caved when Dad's car broke down, when they couldn't afford a vet bill, when Melissa needed new shoes for the kids. I gave and gave and gave. But now, I was done bleeding so they could be comfortable. For the first time in my adult life, I stopped answering the phone. I didn't defend myself. I didn't engage. I didn't plead for understanding. I went silent, and that scared them more than anything. Weeks passed. The calls slowed. The messages trickled. Eventually, even Melissa stopped reaching out, and as their noise faded, something else took its place. Stillness. And in that stillness, I found something I'd never had before. A sense of self not defined by what I could give others. I started filling my home with more than just furniture. I planted herbs in the backyard, rosemary, basil, mint. I invited friends over for Sunday brunch. I framed old photos and hung them in the hallway. Pictures of me graduating college, me hiking through Colorado, me smiling with friends who had become my real family. The space that once felt like a fortress against my past slowly turned into a reflection of my future. One evening, while sipping tea on the front porch, Grandma called. "I just wanted to say again," she said, "you made the right decision. I'm proud of you, Rachel, and I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner." Tears welled up in my eyes, not from pain, but from relief, from the long overdue feeling of finally being seen. "You were always strong," she said. "You just needed permission to stop carrying their burdens." And she was right. I never wanted to be the villain in my family's story. But if standing up for myself made me the bad guy in their eyes, so be it, because being the hero in my story mattered more. In the end, they didn't lose the money because I was selfish. They lost it because they underestimated the quiet woman who saved in silence, who listened more than she spoke, and who, when pushed too far, finally chose herself. And that was the real inheritance. The peace I fought for. It's been 4 months now since that final knock on my door, since the showdown that ended years of quiet sacrifice and opened a new chapter of freedom I didn't know I was allowed to write. And you know what? I've never felt lighter. My house, once clouded by anxiety and family tension, is now exactly what I dreamed it would be. Mine. The walls no longer echo with guilt or obligation. They hold laughter, music, the quiet hum of contentment. On Sunday mornings, I open the windows wide, let in the breeze, and sip hot coffee in silence. Not the silence of suppression, but the silence of peace. I started a small vegetable garden out back. Nothing fancy, just tomatoes, peppers, and green beans. But there's something therapeutic about getting my hands in the soil, nurturing something that grows because of me. Not because someone asked for it, not because it's expected, but because I want it. I've hosted 2 dinner parties since the fallout, real ones, where no one whispers behind my back or measures the square footage like they're entitled to it. We cook together, laugh until the wine glasses rattle, and toast to things that actually matter: hard work, chosen family, and second chances at joy. As for my parents and Melissa, they've mostly gone quiet. Every now and then, I'll get a stray text or voicemail, some pleading, some passive-aggressive. I don't answer. I don't argue. I don't explain. I've realized that the more you try to defend your boundaries to people who never respected them, the more power you give away. Grandma and I talk every week now. She's become more than a support system. She's a mirror. Someone who reminds me that strength doesn't always look like confrontation. Sometimes it looks like letting go and never looking back. I used to think family meant unconditional loyalty, no matter how much it hurt. But now I know. Real family shows up, lifts you up, and claps the loudest when you win. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm just done. Done sacrificing my well-being on the altar of keeping the peace. Done explaining why I deserve what I've worked for. Done letting guilt wear the mask of love. I built this life brick by brick, through tears, discipline, and grit. I earned every inch of it, and no amount of Facebook posts, dramatic speeches, or guilt trips will ever change that. This house isn't just where I live, it's where I finally became free. And to anyone who's ever been made to feel guilty for their success, for choosing peace over chaos, for saying no to those who always said take, let me say this: you don't have to prove your worth to those who refuse to see it. Sometimes the loudest statement you can make is moving on. Life lesson: boundaries are a form of self-respect. Rachel's journey is more than just a revenge story. It's a powerful lesson in resilience, boundaries, and self-worth. In a culture that often equates sacrifice with virtue, especially within families, we're rarely taught that saying no is a valid form of love for ourselves. Rachel didn't come from privilege. She didn't inherit success. She built it with grit, spreadsheets, and sacrifice. And when she finally claimed what she'd earned, a modest home, a symbol of dignity, her family didn't cheer. They tried to take it. Not because they needed it, but because they assumed they could. That's the painful truth many Americans face, that those closest to us may feel entitled to what we've bled to build. But Rachel's choice, to draw a line, stand firm, and reclaim her peace, is a reminder that success should never come with guilt. You are allowed to protect your joy. You're allowed to keep what you earned. And sometimes the healthiest legacy you can build is one free from those who never truly valued you. Middle age teaches us that peace is priceless. Rachel's story proves it's also possible and worth fighting for.